Becoming a net zero emissions energy business by 2050. Nice words, you say, but what does it actually mean? Well, it means net zero emissions when we produce and process energy, and net zero emissions when people use the energy we sell them. This is the target at the heart of our Powering Progress strategy, and it supports the more ambitious goal of the United Nations Paris Agreement, which is to limit the global rise in temperature to 1.5 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels. Now let's be clear, this is not something Shell can realize alone. To get there, society as a whole needs to act now. To understand how best to address our emissions, we first need to know how much we are generating and where these emissions actually come from. So let me briefly explain how Shell defines and measures its emissions. So we use the globally recognized Greenhouse Gas Protocol, which categorizes emissions as Scope 1, Scope 2 and Scope 3. You'll see this method used across all of our reporting to make it transparent and simple. So what are Scope 1 emissions? They are the direct emissions from all our operations, which includes oil and gas exploration and production, processing, refining and chemicals production. Scope 2 emissions are indirect emissions. So the emissions from the energy that we buy to run our operations, such as electricity, steam and heat. And finally, Scope 3, these are our customers' emissions, primarily from their use of the energy products that we sell, but also the life cycle emissions of energy products that we buy from others and then sell to our customers. Now, to get a sense of what this means, let's imagine this square represents Shell's emissions for 2021. And of this total, some 68 million tons of CO2 equivalent were from emissions under our operational control. And that included Scope 1, which is the yellow block here, which accounted for 60 million tons. And Scope 2 emissions, the grey block, 8 million tons. Now, in comparison, 1,299 million tons of emissions resulted from the use of the energy products that we sold to our customers, so the Scope 3 emissions. Shell sells around 3.5 times the amount of energy that we produce ourselves. So by addressing the emissions of all our customers, not just what we produce, but all that we sell, we have one of the most comprehensive targets in the energy industry. And we believe our total carbon emissions from energy sold peaked in 2018 at around 1,700 million tons of CO2 equivalent. Now, to reach our net zero emissions target by 2050, Shell will need to reduce that number to zero. Yes, zero. And this is how we're going to do it. We have set an absolute emissions reduction target of 50% by 2030 compared to 2016 levels, and on a net basis covering all our Scope 1 and 2 emissions that are under our operational control. We've also set specific carbon intensity targets for the short, medium and long term to manage the change required in our business and every unit of energy we sell, with executive pay tied to the short-term targets. And we met the first of these in 2021. And we've also identified how best to tackle the emissions from each scope in different ways. So take Scope 1 emissions, the 60 million tons. Over half of these come from our downstream businesses, primarily refining and chemicals, followed then by emissions from integrated gas, which is the production of gas to liquids, GTL, and the production of liquefied natural gas, or LNG. And finally, emissions from upstream, so oil and gas production. So to lower our Scope 1 emissions, we're working on various plans, such as transforming our refineries and our chemical plants into just 5 integrated energy and chemical parks to make them more efficient. And making improvements to existing operations by addressing methane intensity, eliminating routine flaring, and using carbon capture and storage technology to safely lock away CO2 underground. To reduce Scope 2 emissions, so the 8 million tons, Shell is already shifting to purchasing renewable power to run our operations. By the end of 2021, we had already reduced our Scope 1 and Scope 2 absolute emissions by 18% compared to 2016. And lastly, successfully addressing our Scope 3 emissions, so the 1,299 million tons. This means a big change in the energy products that we currently sell and in the demand for products. And this is central to our Powering Progress strategy, because it means offering low and zero carbon products and solutions to all our customers to help them avoid, reduce and compensate their emissions. And critically, it also means working with customers and others to transform energy use and to encourage the uptake of these lower carbon products. Together, we must find solutions to bring down the cost of supply by encouraging the right mandates and investment in infrastructure, as well as ensuring customers' vehicles and equipment are ready for our products across all sectors. So take road freight. As a viable option to diesel, Shell is providing biofuels, hydrogen and charging services, whilst jointly working on the required changes to enable the shift to these products. In personal mobility, drivers switching to a battery electric car or a van choose Shell charging as an alternative to petrol. And in home heating, Shell Energy's renewable electricity is a viable alternative to gas, once customers have installed the right equipment. In hard to decarbonize sectors like aviation or marine and industry, different energy solutions driven by government policy, technology availability and the pace of adoption will also be required. And high quality nature-based carbon credits could also play a valuable role in decarbonization. Of course, we recognize that different countries will choose different solutions on various timelines. But what is certain is that we all have to act together. Significant collaboration between governments, industry, customers and society as a whole is vital in transforming both supply and demand, sector by sector. And the ambitious action needed at all levels of government and internationally is recognized in Shell's global climate and energy transition policy principles. We are working as a partner for sustainable, economy-wide change and to accelerate the decarbonization of the energy and services that we offer to power progress together.